Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Tulsa, Tier 9 American heavy cruiser available for coal. How good is this ship and is it worth getting in 2024? This is a very unique ship as it brings Des Moines-esque playstyle to Tier 9. That is very, very important. This ship has a solid radar, good concealment, and fast reloading guns. Although you only get 6 guns, where Des Moines of course gets 9. The radar here is very useful, and combined with the decent concealment here, we are a very good ship at dealing with cap zones. We're good at helping our friendly destroyers win these early DD engagements, as well as just help our team win games through our utility. It's very, very nice to have, especially after I've been playing a lot of these battle cruisers. Certainly the reload is also a very nice aspect of this ship. We get Des Moines AP, which looks like that. So we only get 6 shells, but that AP absolutely slaps cruisers. Also battleships in their upper belt, it absolutely annihilates people. It's a very, very nice shell type to have. Although we do have to deal with some wonky dispersion from time to time, much like Des Moines or Salem do, but we have less shells, so it hurts us a little bit more. Now you might be thinking that sounds OP, right? Sure, only 6 guns, but you get Des Moines levels of reload, essentially, on a tier 9 here. What is that? Well, we actually have worse DPM than Buffalo. I don't think people are huge fans of Buffalo, although I don't mind Buffalo personally, the tech tree tier 9. But yeah, worse DPM than the Buffalo, which feels a little bit bad. This ship, of course, can buff its reload a few ways using some commander skills. Of course, if you have Halsey, you get yourself Confederate, you're going to get a much nicer reload, but you can't always rely on that. Lepanto pushing up here on the flank, and we're still using AP. I found myself using AP a ton in this ship. I use HE quite a bit with Salem and Des Moines just because it has the shell volume to give decent salvos and especially get a lot of fires, and Tulsa just doesn't quite have that. So I found myself relying on the AP more, and that actually makes me think that I should be shooting AP more in my Des Moines and Salem as well, just because of how well the Tulsa AP performed here. This ship is fairly strong, although it's difficult to get high damaging games. This is going to be my best game here to start with, and we rely a lot on the AP and getting cruiser broadsides in particular. This ship oftentimes had around 100k damage. I think that's my average in this ship right now, which is fine, but nothing too spectacular when you think about a ship with fast reloading 203s. Certainly would like to see more damage out of a ship like this, especially considering the armor. We only have 27 millimeters of armor here, which is great against any 380 millimeter guns, but there's a lot of 406s, 457s at this tier, so you're going to get overmatched by a ton of battleships. So you got to worry about that. You got to play around islands and play rather passive or conservatively to start with. The AA is decent, especially if carriers decide to run into your flak, but if they don't, it's not going to be all that impressive. We do finish off some planes there with the Friesland and clear this flank, which is really nice. York pushing in here broadside, still on that armor piercing. Those improved pen angles on Des Moines AP is just so nice, and to get that with Tulsa is amazing. So the AP here, very, very good. You can see us also activating our commander skill for better reload, top grade gunner there. Very, very useful. And the rudder shift here is very good with this build. I wasn't actually running concealment in this match. I had swapped it over to rudder shift on the upgrade slots, although the commander did still have concealment. But I found myself really enjoying this build actually, where it allowed me to be just a bit more maneuverable and allowed me to dodge some battleship salvos that otherwise kind of just smash this ship with overmatch. So this seems to be a good build for it, at least for me. But I'll show you that towards the end. Speaking of really nice things about this ship is the turret angles. Forwards, it's 30 degrees, which is good, but nothing too spectacular, I don't think. But when you're kiting, you can actually fire all your guns at 25 degrees. That is very rare, and this ship can take advantage of that if you're kiting away or you're angled away behind an island, anything like that. It allows you to use all of your guns much easier. And that's what this ship really needs, as again, it lacks some DPM, I think, especially when considering that this ship does have worse DPM than something like a Buffalo. We also have worse range, right? We have 14.9 kilometers of range, where Buffalo gets 15.6, for example. So a little bit painful there, but I am still running reload mod, even though I could run range. We're just, again, that battle impact is so sad. I'll have a clip later on that I'll point out to you guys when it comes to DPM, but there were times where I felt like this ship could have used even a half-second better reload, or maybe some better dispersion or something, because it can be a little bit sad. Pushing out here against a Minnesota open water, maybe not the best idea, but I figure, hey, he's in smoke or behind smoke, maybe I can shoot, and then the smoke disappears. And we're going to try and use the rudder shift and our acceleration to juke this, hoping to slow down and turn in. But he actually leads perfectly for me to do this, actually. And we do eat some overmatch damage. That's how it goes as a cruiser here. That's to be expected, especially at these closer ranges. I'm fortunate that I didn't die there to the Minnesota. Now we'll get some more AP into his broadside since he's so kind to offer that to us. Getting us a Confederate. Had to bring that up, of course, earlier, because with Confederate Halsey, yeah, the DPM feels very, very nice. We're already up to 157 in this game. This certainly was my best match available for Tulsa. Oftentimes, I found myself having really, really bad games anytime I got up-tiered. I got a few up-tiered games into Tier 10, and especially super ships, fighting against super carriers, super battleships. It's just GG at that point. You can't really do a whole lot. It's very, very, very difficult. As a Tier 9, that is something you have to consider as a downside these days is your matchmaker. It is so much worse than it used to be against super ships, even against a lot of Tier 10s these days. The meta is just so much more passive that it's very difficult to play a ship like this. And that's where maybe if we had a system like in World of Tanks that allowed you to swap between two equipment setups early in the match, like before the game is started while it's loading, that would help this ship a lot, and many others allow you to run a range setup and a more reload focused setup when you get better matchmaker. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be coming to the game. I don't know why, because it seems like such an amazing feature. But hey, I don't know. I don't know what the development's like. Maybe it's just that our game engine is older, right? This is still on the original game engine from pre-2010, I think. I don't know when that game engine came out for original World of Tanks, but World of Tanks got updated and World of Warships seems to be left behind, unfortunately. So we probably won't see features like that, unfortunately, but that would help out ships like Tulsa a lot that do want to play at such close ranges with the better reload in matchmaker that allows it, which is when it's top tier, of course, against Tier 7s, Tier 8s, and even Tier 9s. If it's just all Tier 9 matchmaker, I will gladly take reload. But anytime I'm facing Tier 10s or super ships especially, I would love to be able to swap over to my range setup. That would just help so much. But anytime I'm running that range setup, I'm just always, again, so sad about the DPM. 6 guns, as you know, is not my favorite, especially on battleships, but even on a cruiser, man, it's not the most fun thing in the world. The plane spotting here does get us shot at, unfortunately, but luckily he had HE loaded, so we didn't die. And hopefully the RAP will finish him off. That's over 200,000 damage though. So it can still get damage, but it feels like I have to work a lot harder for that damage. I feel like I have to shoot more and for longer than a lot of other cruisers to gain similar levels of damage. I guess that makes sense because we have just higher reload, faster reload, of course, with the reduced number of shells, but it feels a little bad. I think this ship could have better DPM, especially than something like a Buffalo, for example, and still be fine. I don't think it would be called overpowered. I certainly don't see this ship a whole lot, so maybe if a buff is warranted in the future, I don't know. But 208,000 there. We got, what, 11 Citadels, so it feels pretty amazing. You're not going to see that every day, but you got to respect this ship AP when you're in a cruiser. Here we're dealing with a Salem pushing into us. I'm waiting here for our friendly gearing torpedoes to force him to turn, and then we open up with the AP. Only have 6 shells here. We need some Citadels, because if he just angles into us, well, Salem will easily kill us outright, especially with that super heal. But there we go, 1 Citadel, 12,000 damage from that salvo, and then we get another 7k without even a Citadel at even a more extreme angle. That's the key here, is that Tulsa can get away with more AP because of these extreme pen angles that something like Des Moines AP does have. It's very, very nice. Dealing with a Wu Jing, for example, which is an Alsace clone essentially at tier 9, it has 380s. So our 27 millimeters of armor means we do not get overmatched. So we can angle into this and he will auto bounce. I'm using HE to start because I want the fires to begin with. He's on such high HP that I want to get a couple fires burning and then swap over to armor piercing for more consistent damage. We get the fire, he damage cons it, so I'll stick with some HE, go to the AP for a bit, but I want to get a permanent fire ideally. But this is going to take a while to actually kill this guy. So that's the thing. This ship is not going to be bursting down battleships all that easily. That's where I want to play behind islands a lot more than open watering. I can do it here against a ship that doesn't overmatch me, but anytime there's overmatch and there's open water, it's very, very difficult as you don't have the range. Which is fine, right? If you take range mod, the shell velocity gets pretty bad out to longer ranges as well. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not just an easy fix to take range mod. It's very difficult to lead these shells at further ranges. We dodge the submarine torps, and here you can see I was running a more full conceal build, and that rudder shift isn't quite as good. This is why, or one of the reasons why I decided to swap over to it. Personal preference, truly. The extra concealment is very, very nice. I think it gets down to 9.5 kilometer detect, which is pretty good. The radar is 9 kilometers, by the way. I think I said that, but if I hadn't, it's 9 kilometer radar. So no stealth radaring here, but very, very close when you take that full conceal build. We're still able to dodge most of the sub-torpedoes, though, as we're pushing in. We got that hydro activated. Very nice to have both an option for hydro and radar. Again, we talked about that with Salem, but we don't have that with the Salem. We have to choose between radar or hydro because we're forced into defensive fire. Not optimal these days with the way carriers are. We would much rather take a hydro than a defensive fire because defensive fire really doesn't do much these days. If, for example, defensive fire did what it used to do pre-rework in the RTS days where it forced carriers to have maximum dispersion on their drops when defensive fire was up, then I'd probably take defensive fire again, to be honest with you. That was very useful. But it no longer does that. Carriers are not designed to be very difficult anymore, unfortunately. Hopefully we get ourselves a rework at some point here, but again, we haven't seen that quite yet. So for now, with Tulsa, I'm very happy to take a hydro. This consumable setup is very, very nice. Having a heal, a radar, and a hydro, that's really all I would like on a ship like this one. Certainly much better than a defensive fire forced on us in a Salem. Now the question is, Salem or Tulsa, right? What do you pick? Both available for coal, both are American heavy cruisers with basically the same guns. I would pick either one, honestly. We're going to talk about that soon once I go over all these ships and compare them. But I should compare them in this video as I've already looked at the Salem. Salem, if you remember, I talked about it being just a very similar playstyle to Des Moines, and in fact, a little bit worse than Des Moines just because it often can't make full use of all of its super healing, and the extra radar range is very, very nice to have on the Des Moines. So I would just prefer to have Des Moines as it's also free, right? You just grind it for free. You don't have to use your resources for it, or at least coal for it. This, by the way, is the clip about DPM I was talking about earlier. We're actually not going to kill this Benson. Yeah. Yep. And I think Tulsa is an interesting ship, again, when it comes to tier 9s versus tier 10s here for special ships and premium ships. Tier 9s do get extra credit boosting potential, where the tier 10 special ships, they're not premiums, they're special. They allow you to swap the commanders for free, which is really nice, and they do have reduced repair costs. Rip to the Scharnhorst. Didn't really need the Mr. President get down, but he did it anyway, so we're still alive. I think I probably would have dodged those torpedoes, but Benson did live. Pretty disappointing, although that fire is ticking on him. Tier 9s, though, giving you that extra credit income is a very real benefit. So if you're looking for credit income specifically, I would recommend going with a tier 9 over a tier 10. But the matchmaker is a little bit worse, and Tulsa is not the easiest ship to play at all. It's actually a lot harder because you have less HP, less armor, and less range. The DPM also means you're not quite as scary to push around islands, and you can't really farm things down as quickly compared to a Salem or a Des Moines. So even though I think Tulsa is an interesting ship, I think it's a much harder ship to play. And for that, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it to people. Maybe if we got better tier 9 matchmaker. I'm showing you the best stuff here, by the way. I don't really feel like showing you games where I got 10,000 damage and died instantly, or sat behind an island and waited for people to get within 15 kilometers and they never did all match because it's tier 10 or super ships tier where everybody sits at 20 kilometers. So very, very difficult to deal with that kind of matchmaker in this ship. And even in these tier 9 games, these top tier 1s where we're facing some tier 8s and tier 7s, the damage output isn't insane, right? That first match is very, very good, very strong. Getting over 200k like that, but needing Halsey to help us out for sure. And I never really got there all that often. 100k seemed to be like a good game in this ship, and it results in very high base XP because oftentimes you're fighting DDs, you're fighting light cruisers, so you're not farming battleships as much, but you're getting a lot of battle impact, which is nice. In a tier 9 ranked season, this might be a very good option to get you those Des Moines guns and a radar that's relatively stealthy in tier 9 ranked. That could be a good option, but still, it doesn't seem to be a very good option in my opinion. I don't know. I just found myself, it's a little too limited. I'm conflicted though, because I did have a few good games, and it's so close to being really good. I still love Des Moines. It's one of my favorite cruisers, heavy cruisers in the game. It's really fun to have such fast-firing guns with such hard-hitting armor piercing, and the HE, to be fair, is very good. High enough fire chance and good alpha damage. So it's fun to have these fast-firing, hard-hitting guns. Tulsa's just a miniature version of that that's a little bit too compromised. I guess that's the best way to sum this ship up, is it's almost a Des Moines, but has too much compromise to get it at tier 9, in my opinion. Somehow we Citadel this encounter while aiming for his turrets. I don't know how. World of Warships, right? Weird stuff happens. It's an RNG game, I guess. But yeah, we will help finish him off, and that's going to be the end of this game. But that's 90k damage. 93k, I guess. We got a few hits in on this DD. But this is still going to be top score base XP-wise on less than 100k in this game. That's, you know, not by much, but battle impact is there when it comes to this ship. So as you can probably tell here, I'm very conflicted when it comes to Tulsa. I have some fun times with this ship, but the up tiers are just a little bit too brutal on this one. And honestly, the dispersion is pretty annoying when you have so few guns here. Fast firing guns are nice, but we don't have very many of them. The shells are amazing, and maybe this ship could do with even a half-second reload buff, maybe even less than that would be all it takes, but just a little bit of a reload buff, and this ship would be a lot of fun. It's a bit of a glass cannon, certainly, and I found myself really liking steering gears mod here. Again, giving me 6.3 second rudder shift with a 750 meter turning circle radius, combined with those excellent firing angles while kiting. It allowed you to play in some of those more uncomfortable games, higher tier, longer range ones, but still very difficult. Range mod could be an answer for you. The problem, of course, there is then we have a 5.8 second reload on 6 guns. Not great. So for me, I tried to make reload work, and then I just kind of decided that, hey, if I get into super ship games, which happened more than I'd like to admit, I guess it's just over. I'll try my best, but I'm just going to expect 0 damage and to die early. And oftentimes that's what happened. And then just play for the better matchmaker, which is really not great. That is not a good gaming experience. I'm not trying to excuse that, but that's just the reality of how I played this one, to be honest with you. Because I just found range mod, the reload was just... I already feel like this ship needs a reload buff, even with reload mod and taking top grade gunner. It's kind of rough. I took heavy AP shells as well instead of superintendent. Going heavy HE was just made the concealment not good enough. I couldn't run lighthouse build on this ship. It's too squishy, too compromised, too little range. But having heavy AP here, buffing those AP shells just a little bit more was nice. And I took that over superintendent, which I don't normally do. But here, 3 radars is enough. 3 heals is enough. Oftentimes, I'm going to eat a ton of damage anyway and die before I get to those heals if I'm put into bad spots anyway. So I'd rather take Survivability Expert. But a more standard build certainly would run Superintendent instead of Heavy AP, I think, and would be pretty solid still. Run Halsey if you can. Activating Halsey helps a ton, but it's a hard ship to play. This one is very, very hard to play. Potential for fun. I had some fun matches, but they were very difficult, and we had some very, very tilting games against some of those super ships, man. It's hard. It's very, very, very hard. The armor, not great as well, as we can see, and the Citadel is just above water. Fortunately, doesn't go under the turrets, so you do have to aim for the center mass here if you're shooting at this thing, but if it pokes around islands, I've done a few videos on that, but your actual spotting location is the like the bridge of your ship or the tallest point of your ship or whatever. So if you can hide your ship behind an island like this, let's say there's an island here, and poke your guns out, you actually won't get spotted while firing. I think I did a Des Moines or Salem video on that, but Tulsa certainly can take advantage of that. Doesn't work on every map, but can be an option. Fortunately, these tier 9s are a little bit cheaper than the tier 10s, but for me, I would rather have a Salem than a Tulsa, just because I'm not looking as much for credits at this point, so I'd rather have the better ship. And when it comes to Salem, I'd just rather play a Des Moines. So that's kind of the end of the Tulsa video in 2024. Potential for fun against its own tier and certainly against down tiers, but man, those up tiers are painful. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you've got yourself a Tulsa, how do you find it these days? I think it's fine enough, but could use some love. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.